I never thought I'd become someone I barely recognize. But after catching Emma cheating and discovering she was pregnant, everything in me changed. The anger, the betrayal, it all consumed me. I lost control. I beat the guy she had been involved with, yelled at her parents when they had the nerve to blame me for what happened, and eventually, I just walked away. I didn't know how to deal with the pain, and now, after all these months, I still don't. It's been 7 months since I found out about the affair. We're both 39, and before this, I thought our marriage was solid. We weren't perfect, no one is, but I built my world around her and our kids. I worked long hours, doing everything I could to provide for Emma, so she could stay home and raise Emily and James. Every day, I'd look for ways to brighten her day, to remind her I loved her. I thought we were happy. Looking back, I guess I should have seen the cracks forming. But I didn't. I couldn't. High school was when everything started. I wasn't always the guy I am now. Back then, I was cocky, rude, getting into fights, surrounded by girls. I didn't care about much beyond having fun. Then for some reason, I noticed Emma. She was the complete opposite of me. Nerdy, quiet into video games, comics, and cosplay. I don't know what drew me to her, but she was different. She made me feel like I could be more than the arrogant jerk everyone knew me as. We became inseparable that summer before senior year. I'd walk into the comic shop where she worked, hang around, talking with her for hours, then walk her home. Eventually, I started inviting her to parties, and one night I even taught her how to salsa. That was the night things shifted between us. By the end of that summer, we were together. We dated all through senior year, and it was the best year of my life. I was still part of the popular crowd, going to parties, but what I loved most were the nights when it was just us, talking about everything and nothing. She made me care about school, made me study with her, and we both ended up getting into the same college. After we graduated, we got married, and not long after, Emily was born. James came along less than 2 years later, and life was good. Or at least it felt good. I worked my ass off for us, even when it wasn't easy. At first, I was taking odd jobs, construction, janitorial work, even grave digging just to make ends meet. Then I finally landed a break as a computer tech. I started putting on weight during those years, but it didn't bother me. I still had plenty of energy, plenty of drive. I stayed big and strong for her, for our family. Emma, on the other hand, kept herself in shape. She was beautiful, and I loved that about her. We even leaned into the joke of us being the fit wife and the big husband by dressing up as Fred and Wilma Flintstone one Halloween. But behind the laughs, there was tension. I didn't realize it at first, but things were starting to change. Her physical desire for me had faded. I'd still want her like always, but she didn't feel the same. I used to think she loved our intimacy, but over the years, she pulled away. She'd say she was tired, and I believed her. I knew she had a lot on her plate. Taking care of the kids, cooking, cleaning, it made sense that she'd be exhausted. But I couldn't help but feel that she didn't want me anymore. The no's came more often than the yes. At first, I brushed it off, but over time, it started to wear me down. I'd get irritable when we went too long without it. I'd try to make up for lost time when we did, but those long nights left her sore, and it wasn't enough. I'd want more, but she didn't. I started asking her to wear the costumes she used to wear for me, the ones she knew I loved. She refused. I felt like I was losing her. The irony is she'd still make costumes for me for our comic and video game conventions, and I'd wear them for her, even though I hated it. I'd do it because it made her happy. But somewhere along the way, I guess I stopped making her happy. And then she found someone else. We tried everything to fix it. Counseling, therapy, you name it. Our therapist even suggested that maybe I was borderline addicted to intimacy. But the thing is, I wasn't some kind of sex addict. I only ever wanted Emma. I never looked at anyone else. She was all I needed. We were supposed to figure it out together, but it felt like no matter what we did, nothing worked. Emma got herself checked out, too. Her doctor said she had low estrogen, which could explain why her desire had disappeared. They gave her medication, but it didn't help. Eventually, they diagnosed her with something called female sexual dysfunction. I didn't even know that was a real thing. But there was another barrier, another reason why we couldn't find our way back to what we had. I thought we were doing everything we could to fix it, but even then, something inside her was slipping away. I never saw it coming. The affair wasn't planned. It wasn't even about her feeling lonely. She didn't seem lonely. not with me. I loved her, and I made sure she knew it. I wanted her, showed her attention, tried to make her happy. By all appearances, we were still happy, or at least that's what I told myself. And yet, she still did it. It happened one night when she went out with some friends. They're all married, like us, and they go to the same church. It was supposed to be an innocent night out, just bowling and catching up after the long stretch of lockdowns. She told me she was having fun, and I believed her. But after the game, when most of her friends left, she didn't come home. Instead, she went to the lounge to wait out the buzz from a few drinks. That's when she met him, Alex, some young guy, barely in his 20s. They started talking about manga of all things, and then they started flirting. She wasn't drunk, and she wasn't lonely, but she flirted back anyway. I still can't wrap my head around that. I gave her everything. I thought I was enough, but clearly I wasn't. They talked for hours, and eventually, he walked her to her car. That's when he kissed her, and instead of stopping him, she kissed him back. They ended up in some cheap motel next door, but it wasn't some passionate, romantic affair. She said it was awkward. It didn't even last long. He wanted more from her than she was willing to give, and somewhere in the middle of it, she realized what she was doing. That's when she shoved him off, apologized, and left. She came home that night while I was asleep on the couch with the kids. I didn't know it then, but the moment she saw us, me, James, and Emily asleep, peacefully unaware of what she'd just done, it nearly broke her. She told me she slipped into the shower and just stood there crying, trying to wash away the guilt. She told herself it was a mistake, a one-time thing, and that it would never happen again. But when she came out of that shower, I didn't know any of it. I didn't know that everything had changed. She left me and the kids asleep on the couch and went to bed alone. She cried herself to sleep, but I didn't hear it. The next morning, everything seemed normal. For 5 weeks, she pretended like nothing had happened. I didn't notice anything was wrong, even though she told me later that she felt like she was suffocating under the weight of the secret. I thought things are getting better. I thought we were healing. But then she realized something that would change everything. She was late. When she took that pregnancy test and it came back positive, she panicked. I didn't know it at the time, but she was terrified. We had been intimate a couple of times in those weeks, but I had a vasectomy. There was no way it could have been mine. That's when the truth started to unravel. The affair, her one-night stand with Alex, came rushing back, and she knew there was no hiding it anymore. She went to the doctor, and they concluded that Alex must have taken the condom off without her realizing. He never finished, she said, but the doctor explained that it didn't matter. It could have happened with just pre-******. Hearing that, she was horrified. She couldn't hide the pregnancy, not from me. So she scheduled an abortion. She didn't want to bring this child into our lives. She didn't want to do that to me. But she didn't realize that the damage had already been done. When I came home that evening, I could tell something was off. Emma forced a smile, but it looked fake, and I couldn't return it. I was too angry, too shaken. I had come home early because I couldn't stand waiting any longer. I needed to confront her. I pulled out my phone, showing her an email from our health insurance. A new claim had come in for an abortion. I didn't need to ask, but I did. Who's the father? My voice came out harder than I intended, but I couldn't help it. Rage was bubbling inside me, and the more I stared at her, the more it consumed me. Her face went pale, and I could see the panic set in. She started crying, but that only made me angrier. I asked her again, louder this time, who's the father, and how long has this been going on? She finally admitted it was a one-time thing. She told me she'd pushed Alex away halfway through, but I didn't believe her. How could I? She had already lied by keeping it from me. Now, I was supposed to trust that it was just once? My voice rose, shaking the walls. Tell me the truth. When she repeated herself, something inside me snapped. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed her by the chin and slammed her against the wall. I had never laid a hand on her before, ever, but in that moment I could barely recognize myself. I was trembling, my vision blurred by the tears I was trying to hold back. I needed to know. I needed every detail. Where did they meet? What did they do? What did Alex look like? The questions came out of my mouth like fire, burning everything in their path. Before I left, I spat the words that would haunt me. You slut. It came out in Spanish, the language my mother used when she was furious. Then I stormed out, slamming the door behind me. I don't know how long I drove aimlessly after that. All I knew was that I needed to do something, anything, to release the fury inside me. And I did. I found him. Alex. I tracked him down at the bowling alley. The moment I saw his face, I attacked. I didn't hold back. He deserved it. I don't remember much about the fight itself. Just fists flying and his face hitting the ground. My body was on autopilot, fueled by pure rage. When it was over, I walked away, bruised and bloodied, but not nearly satisfied. The damage was done, but the pain still lingered. By the time I got home, it was after midnight. Emma was waiting for me. The look on her face said it all. She was scared, desperate to understand what had happened. I walked past her, my body aching, and headed for the bathroom. When she asked if I was okay, I shoved her away. "It's not my blood," I muttered before locking myself in the bathroom. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at myself in the mirror. A black eye, blood on my shirt, bruises on my fists. Who the hell was I anymore? When I finally came out, she was still waiting for me at the top of the stairs, asking who I had fought. I didn't want to answer, but when she kept pressing, I finally snapped. "Who do you think?" The next day, she went to the bowling alley to confirm what she already knew. She found out I had fought Alex. It didn't matter to me. Fights like that happen all the time in our town. As long as no one gets seriously hurt, the sheriff doesn't get involved. But the damage had already been done, physically and emotionally. For the next week, I kicked her out of our bedroom. The thought of her being in our bed, where I had once felt safe, disgusted me. I couldn't stand the sight of her. She tried sneaking back in twice. The first time, I yelled at her to leave. The second time, I didn't even bother with words. I shoved her off the bed, cold and angry. She stood there, staring at me, probably wondering where the man she married had gone. But I didn't care. She returned to the sofa and cried herself to sleep. I didn't feel anything. The day she was scheduled to have the abortion, I told her, in no uncertain terms, that she had better go through with it. There was no way I could live with another man's child. She asked me to come with her, but I looked at her with all the hatred I could muster. "Go F***K yourself," I said. I didn't care if she was scared or alone. When she came back that evening, there were moving trucks parked outside the garage. I was done with her, and I needed space. I had my friends help me move my things out of the house and into the garage. When she asked what was going on, I told her it was none of her business. I didn't know her anything. My friends exchanged uncomfortable glances, but they didn't say a word. They knew better than to get involved. A few hours later, I started converting the garage into an apartment. I needed my own space, away from her, away from the memories. She came out, tried to talk, to apologize, but I ignored her. I had nothing left to say. Eventually, she snapped. She broke down, sobbing, apologizing for everything. But instead of feeling pity, all I felt was anger. I told her I wasn't going to waste any more energy on her. I even admitted that if I could afford it, I would divorce her in a heartbeat. But after talking to a few lawyers, I realized it wasn't an option. Alimony and child support would leave me broke. So I was stuck with her. The first month was hell. We couldn't hide what was happening from the kids anymore. They were too smart for that. I tried to stay distant, but every time I saw them, it broke my heart. Emma tried to pretend everything was normal, inviting me to meals, but I refused. I couldn't stand being near her. I'd come home, check on the kids, and head straight into the garage. That was my life now. The second month after I moved into the garage, Emma begged me to go to counseling. Part of me didn't want to, but I agreed. What was the point? Every session felt pointless. I sat there, saying nothing, until the counselor pressed me, and when she did, all I could do was shout at Emma about the affair. I didn't care what anyone thought. I had no excuse for my anger. It just poured out. But then I dropped the bombshell, the one thing I hadn't told her. I had been sleeping with other women. At first, I saw the disbelief in her eyes, like she thought I was saying it just to hurt her. But I wasn't lying. The look on my face must have told her that. When the counselor asked how many, I shrugged. I didn't bother keeping track. It had been almost every other day for the past 3 weeks, random women I met through apps and websites. I needed to feel like a man again. I needed to feel wanted, to feel something. When the counselor had the nerve to say, "Two wrongs don't make a right," I fired back. This isn't about two wrongs. She cheated, broke our vows, lied, got pregnant, and tried to cover it up. I'm just trying to adapt to this new situation. I didn't care if it sounded harsh. I wasn't about to let anyone make me feel guilty for how I was coping. Not after everything she'd done. It was clear to me that we were just pretending to be a happy couple. That's what we did when we were out in public. We put on the act, smiling, laughing, playing the part. But behind closed doors, we were nothing more than two strangers sharing the same house. Roommates at best. I knew it hurt Emma, but I didn't care anymore. The part of me that wanted to fix things was long gone. But weirdly, I could see that she still thought there was something left to salvage. The following month, I pushed her even further. I started openly talking to other women in front of her. I didn't hide it anymore. If she could betray me, why should I pretend to care? But when she finally reached her breaking point and told me she wanted a divorce, I just laughed in her face. "Go ahead," I said. "But if you do, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what happened. I'll scream it from the hills, post it on Facebook for all our family and friends to see. Hell, I'll even put it in the holiday newsletter." I wasn't bluffing. I knew she didn't want the world, or especially our kids, knowing the details of her affair. The moment I said it, she backed down. She hesitated, and I had her cornered. She wasn't going anywhere. When she didn't respond, I told her to leave, but she didn't move. We argued back and forth, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something. Even anger was better than the emptiness I had been carrying. Somehow, the argument led to us having sex. It lasted for hours, and I could tell she thought we were finally healing. But when we finished, I looked at her and said, "Get out. Your usefulness has outstayed its welcome." I didn't even feel bad about it. I watched as a shock hit her, but I didn't care. I had become numb. This became our routine for the next few months. Occasionally, we'd hook up, but every time, I kicked her out the moment we were done. It didn't matter. I was still seeing other women, meeting them through the same apps I used before. Emma knew, but she didn't say anything. I think she thought that by tolerating it, by talking to me more, especially during counseling, we might somehow heal. But there was no healing happening. I wasn't interested in it. I was just going through the motions. One day, during one of our counseling sessions, I told the counselor something broke inside me. When I look at her, I feel like I wasted years of my life. I meant every word. Emma asked if there was any way we could start over, if we could try again. I looked at her and said, "As soon as the kids are old enough that I don't have to pay child support, I'm divorcing you." Then I got up and walked out. I didn't wait for a reaction, didn't care to see how it affected her. The truth was out, and I was done. If I'm so dead set on divorcing her, why do I still go to counseling? That's a question I've been asking myself. Maybe it's because I feel obligated. Or maybe there's still a part of me that enjoys watching her squirm, watching her try to figure out what went wrong. But I'm not trying to hurt her anymore. I'm just trying to get through this until the time comes when I can finally walk away for good. Our anniversary was the other day. Our family threw us a party, and for the sake of appearances, I played the part of the happy husband. I held her hand, kissed her cheek, even gave one of those sappy speeches that I knew would make people smile. But deep down, I hated it. I hated myself for pretending, and I hated her for making me feel like this. I miss the way our marriage used to be, the way I used to love her. I miss being able to hold her and actually mean it. When we got home, after putting the kids to bed, she tried to initiate sex again. I went along with it, but as soon as we were done, I got up and left the room. She begged me to stay, but I ignored her. I had nothing left to give. She cried herself to sleep, and I didn't care. Now, I don't know what to do. Part of me is just waiting for the day when I can finally be free of her. The other part of me remembers the life we used to have and wonders if it's even possible to get that back. But it's hard to care about that now. 5. Things have been bad between us ever since I found out about her infidelity, and I'm not going to pretend that I've been handling it in the best way. When Emma showed me the post she wrote about our marriage falling apart, I wasn't sure what to think. Was I really the monster she was hinting at? It's hard to know when you're so deep in the pain. But I'm hurt deeply, and I'm angry. That much I do know. My wife has atypical autism with savant traits. She can do incredible things. listen to any tune and play it perfectly, or take one look at someone and figure out their measurements to make clothes that fit them like a glove. When I first met her, I knew she was different, but I was warned by nearly everyone not to get involved with her. People said she wasn't right in the head. That didn't stop me. I was drawn to her. Her creativity, her passion, the way she saw the world fascinated me. She used to come to school dressed in costumes she made herself, and I loved that about her. Most people didn't get it, but I did. I talked to her every day about her outfits, about the different anime and comic characters she adored. I didn't care about that stuff, but the way she lit up when she talked about it made me happy. In the 90s, the internet wasn't what it is today. I had to put in real effort to understand her condition. I spent time in libraries, spoke to clinics, and did everything I could to learn about autism. I wanted to be there for her, to understand her better. I put in the work because, to me, she was worth it. Our families thought I was crazy for dating her. Even her parents didn't think we'd last. But I didn't care. I loved her. When we started dating, I saw how much she tried to improve, and I wanted to be by her side through it all. We've been seeing the same counselor since we first got together, mostly to help with her autism, though sometimes it helps me too. Living with someone who has autism isn't like the stories you see on TV. It's not like The Good Doctor or Atypical, where the family just understands and works through things perfectly. Real life isn't like that. I dealt with her tantrums, her sensory overloads, and her obsessions with things like manga or making sure our kids didn't have the same condition she does. But I loved her through it all because I believed she was worth it. When we got married, she wanted a cosplay wedding, and I went along with it. It made her feel comfortable, and that was enough for me. But intimacy was always a challenge. We'd have sex anywhere from once to 6 times a month, depending on her mood. Sometimes, not at all. She was so obsessed with making sure our kids didn't inherit her autism that I eventually got a vasectomy. I wanted more kids, but I did it for her. That decision messed with me for a long time. And then there's me. I'm not in the best shape anymore. I'm 5 feet 11 inches, and for years, I've struggled to lose the extra weight. Back in high school, I was 250 pounds of solid muscle. I was a football player, strong, fit. But by the time the affair happened, I was down to 228 with man boobs and a gut. The doctor says it's mostly stretched skin, but that doesn't change how I feel when I look in the mirror. I feel self-conscious, insecure, like I'm not the man I used to be. Maybe that's why the affair hit me so hard. She was the only person who made me feel like I still mattered, like I was still worth something. And then she betrayed me. It wasn't just the act, it was everything that came with it. The lies, the secrecy, the way it made me question my own value as a man. Now I'm just trying to make sense of it all, trying to figure out what's left of me after everything we've been through. After everything, I couldn't even stand the sight of Emma. The hurt and anger were too much. I went to a few lawyers hoping for an escape, but they all told me the same thing. Because of her autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and the fact that we had 2 kids, divorcing her would leave me with next to nothing. One lawyer said I'd be lucky to walk away with $500 a month after alimony and child support. It didn't matter how much I wanted out. Financially, staying married was the smarter option. So that's what I did. I moved out of the house and into the garage, converting it into a small apartment. I know I treated Emma like garbage during that time, and I don't feel good about it. I made sure she went through with the abortion, too. Why? Because I couldn't live with a constant reminder of her affair. There was no way I would ever see that child as mine. It would have only deepened the damage. The first time I slept with another woman, I felt guilty. Nervous even. I almost didn't go through with it. But when she made me feel wanted again, I realized how much I had missed that feeling. It wasn't about the sex. It was about being desired, having someone choose me for once. Every woman I met through those apps gave me that. It might sound shallow, but I explained it during counseling, and even the counselors seemed to understand. Emma kept telling me she didn't know why she cheated. That made no sense to me. This is a woman who can recall the smallest details from any random day in our 26 years together. But suddenly, this slips her mind? I didn't buy it. When I told her about the women I had slept with after the affair, I didn't sugarcoat it. I did it to hurt her, to make myself feel like a man again. After she tore that part of me apart, I needed to reclaim it somehow. And I kept doing it because those hookups gave me something Emma hadn't in years. The sex we had after the affair didn't feel the same. It wasn't real. It felt like she was doing it out of obligation, trying to fix what she had broken. I could feel it. She wasn't with me because she wanted me. She was with me because she was desperate to patch things up. So, every time we had sex, I kicked her out of bed afterward. I didn't want her there if all she was doing was trying to make amends. I told her how I felt, and she was shocked. She insisted she wanted to be with me, but I couldn't believe it. Even if we tried to start over, it would never be the same again. Too much had been broken. That's when I started seeing a therapist. I needed help processing everything, because yes, infidelity is trauma. It cuts deep. It makes you question everything. The years you spent together, the sacrifices you made, all the moments you thought were real. It all starts to feel like a joke at your expense. The hardest part in the beginning was the emptiness, the void where trust used to be. I even had both of our kids tested to make sure they were mine. That's how little I trusted her. Emma was desperate to prove herself, though. She even tried convincing our counselor to give her sodium pentothal, truth serum, so she could prove she hadn't cheated before. She wanted to prove that she didn't mean to cheat this time. But I told her it wouldn't matter. No amount of truth serum would change how I felt. The damage was done. It's been 2 months since I deleted the apps. I haven't been with anyone else during that time. About 3 weeks ago, on our 21st wedding anniversary, we had sex. But the whole time, I knew she was only doing it because it was part of the routine, part of the anniversary expectation. When we finished, I left. I've told her repeatedly what I need from her, but it's like she still doesn't get it. So, I laid it out for her. If she truly wanted to fix things, she needed to come clean to her parents. I wasn't going to tell my friends and family, because they would all just convince me to leave her. As much as they like Emma, they've always had issues with her ASD, and this would just validate their concerns. But her parents, they'd keep it between us. Maybe they could help her figure out a way forward if I decided to leave. But I made no promises. Our kids are 11 and 10. Unless I get some massive raise at work, I'm stuck here for the next 8 years. That's a long time to live under the same roof with someone you can't stand. Will I ever forgive her? I don't know. But I'll never forget. I don't see her the same way anymore. I used to look at Emma and see a woman I'd do anything for. Now I just see someone who broke my heart. They say time heals all wounds, but I know it's going to take a long time for mine to even start to heal. It's been 3 months and things are slow. Slow and steady, I guess. After my last post, we finally sat down with Emma's parents and told them about the affair. I expected them to be angry with her, but no, they were angry with me. They said they'd warned me that something like this could happen because of Emma's ASD, that she's extremely gullible and highly suggestible. According to them, treating her like she was neurotypical was bound to come back and bite me. Hearing that made me furious. For the first time ever, I snapped at her parents. I couldn't control the rage building up inside me, and I just let it out. In the middle of all of it, Emma had a sensory outburst, breaking down as the noise and tension became too much for her. In that moment, I remembered why she had let that guy kiss her, why she didn't push him away. It all made sense, her vulnerability, her inability to handle pressure. But I was too far gone to care. I was angry at everyone. Her parents, the world. For the first time since this nightmare began, I broke down and cried in front of all of them. Even with all the chaos, Emma tried to comfort me. It was strange seeing her push through her own sensory overload to reach out to me. But there she was doing her best. Her parents started crying too, but I couldn't handle it anymore. I excused myself and went outside. Emma followed me. For the first time in months, she told me everything. How the guy approached her at the bowling alley. How they started talking about Goblin Slayer and manga while she waited for the buzz from her drinks to wear off. She said it all felt so innocent, like nothing was going to happen, until it did. Until he kissed her. She let it happen because she didn't want to upset him, but she didn't offer excuses. She admitted it was wrong, selfish, and irrational. I stood there listening, not saying a word. The anger was boiling up inside me, but I kept it down. For once, I just let her talk. I didn't want to hear it, but I let her speak anyway. A week later, I joined a support group for betrayed spouses. I didn't even know groups like that existed, but I found one in the next town over and started going twice a week. Last month, I asked Emma to come with me to one of the meetings. Hearing me talk about the pain I've been carrying, the betrayal, was hard for her. I could see it in her face. Listening to the stories of other people in the group, others who had been through similar betrayals, was overwhelming for both of us. It crushed me, hearing just how deep the pain runs for people like me. Emma was quiet through the whole meeting, but I could tell it was getting to her. Since then, things have been a little better. Last month, I moved back into the house. We're not back to normal, far from it, but we've found some kind of new footing. 2 weeks ago, I even surprised her with a dinner date. It felt like the old days. We were talking, laughing, and for a brief moment, I saw her again, the woman I fell in love with. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope. But then the waiter showed up. It was him, the guy she slept with. In that instant, everything shattered. The anger, the rage, it all came rushing back. I lost it. I don't even remember what I yelled, but I remember lunging at him, attacking him right there in the restaurant. Emma was grabbing her head, crying, overwhelmed by the noise and chaos of the scene. The screaming was too much for her, so I put her noise-canceling headset on her and escorted her outside. I thought I was going to get arrested for sure, but the police never showed up. Somehow, we dodged that bullet. Since that night, though, I've moved back into the garage. I couldn't stay in the house with her after that. I'm still going to the support group twice a week, and I'm seeing both a therapist and our counselor. I'm trying to get through this, but it's hard, so hard. Some days, I wish more than anything that I could undo all of this, that none of it had ever happened. I miss us. I miss what we used to be. But the next 8 years, that's a long time to live under the same roof as someone you can't stand. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her for what she did. All I know is I'll never forget it. When I look at her now, I don't see the woman I fell in love with, the woman I would have done anything for. All I see is the person who broke my heart. People like to say that time heals all wounds, but this one, it's going to take a long time. A very long time. Every day is still a battle. I'm trying to move on, but it's so damn hard. I wish I could undo it all. The affair, the anger, all the moments that tore us apart. But I can't. I miss us. I miss who we were, but I'm not sure if we'll ever get back there. Maybe we can't. After that disastrous night at the restaurant, I moved back into the garage. Emma and I didn't talk much after that. Our therapy sessions became routine, but they didn't bring us closer. I tried to let go of my anger, but every time I saw her, all I could see was the betrayal. I couldn't forgive her, no matter how much I tried. The trust was shattered, and everything felt broken. She started pulling away too. I guess she could sense that things weren't going to change. She became more distant, more withdrawn. The woman who used to talk to me about everything, her feelings, her struggles, her day-to-day thoughts, wasn't there anymore. I didn't see the effort in her eyes. I didn't feel the same connection. It was like she was slipping away, piece by piece, and I didn't know how to stop it. I think the turning point for her came when we had another blowout argument about the affair. I can't even remember how it started, but I remember the look on her face when I brought up the abortion again. I was cruel, and I said things I regret. But I could see something break in her that day, something I couldn't fix. She didn't yell back, didn't cry like she usually would. She just looked at me like she was done, completely spent. A few weeks later, she told me she needed some time away to think. I didn't fight her on it. I figured some space might help. But days turned into weeks, and she never came back. That's when the silence started. No calls, no texts, just nothing. I tried to reach out, but it was like I no longer existed in her world. I found out through our health insurance that she had moved out. That's how disconnected we'd become. Not a word to me, just an email from the insurance company about her updating her address. I was furious. How could she just leave without saying anything? After everything we'd been through, how could she walk away like that? I reached out to her lawyer, the only connection I had left. He told me she didn't want to see me, that she needed a clean break. That was it. No explanation, no conversation, just silence. It felt like a knife to the chest. I thought if we had a chance to talk, I could make her see that we could still fix this. But she had made her choice. That silence destroyed me. I couldn't understand how the woman I'd loved for so long could just disappear. It was like she was erasing me, erasing everything we had shared. I know I wasn't perfect, But after 10 years together, you don't just walk away without a word. But I guess that's exactly what she did. In the weeks after she left, I spiraled. I started drinking, barely ate, couldn't sleep. I became a shell of myself, just going through the motions, hoping every day that she'd come back. Part of me thought she was just angry and needed time. But as more time passed, it became clear that she wasn't coming back. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, that I'd wake up one day, and she'd be there, but that day never came. The divorce was finalized over a year ago. I fought it every step of the way. I begged her for couples therapy, asked her to give us a chance. But she refused. Her lawyer said she didn't want to drag it out any longer, that she wanted to start over. Eventually, the divorce went through, and it felt like a part of me had been cut out. I know I hurt her. I know I failed her. But don't we all deserve a second chance? I spent so long holding on to that hope, even when it hurt. Eventually, when the pain became too much, I started therapy. My therapist doesn't focus on helping me win her back. He just wants me to move on. He tells me to meet new people, to start over, but I don't want that. I'm not even interested in sex anymore. What's the point when the person you really want is gone? Then, a few days ago, something happened that shattered everything. I was drinking with my friend Nick, trying to numb the pain, when we started talking about Emma. He tried to be supportive, telling me to let go. You really need to get over her, he said. She's moved on. She's happy now. You should do the same. There was something about the way he said it that didn't sit right. How could he be so sure? How could he possibly know that Emma was happy? I pressed him for answers, and at first he refused to say anything. But I wouldn't let it go. I begged him. I cried. I needed to know something, anything about her. Finally, he broke down. His wife, Sabrina, had been in contact with Emma for the past year. She never told me. Emma hadn't just left. She had moved to Norway. She got married, and she's 7 months pregnant. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Emma, remarried? Pregnant? I couldn't breathe. How could she move on so easily? How could she build a whole new life without even a conversation? I had been here, waiting, hoping, while she was halfway across the world, starting over. It's like the 10 years we spent together never even mattered. Hearing those words felt like my soul had been ripped out. I literally wanted to die. While I've been sitting here, crying for her, drinking myself into oblivion, holding on to the hope that she'd come back, she was out there building a new life. She got married. She's having sex with someone else. And now, she's pregnant with another man's child. It felt like a slap in the face. I can't wrap my head around it. Where did this guy even come from? How did this happen so fast? I have no answers. No explanations. And it's tearing me apart. I can't move forward without knowing why, without understanding how she could just throw away everything we had and start over with someone else. The only thing I can think of is that she had revenge sex with the first Norwegian guy she met, got pregnant, and decided to keep the baby. Maybe she married him for legal reasons. Maybe she needed to stay in the country. I don't know. I have no idea what's going through her mind. But these thoughts, they're killing me. I refuse to believe that she's in love with him. The thought of it makes me sick. I need to talk to her. I need answers. How can she act like our 10 years together, our 8-year marriage, mean nothing? It feels like I've been erased from her life. Like I never even existed. I'm lost, completely lost. And the worst part? I still want her back. Even now, even knowing she's pregnant with someone else's child. It feels like a nightmare that I can't wake up from. I've thought about traveling to Norway to find her, but how could I? I don't even know what city she's in. I don't know where she lives. She's cut me off from everything, closed her social media, blocked my number. Her family has done the same. They've shut me out completely. It's like she disappeared, wiped away any trace of herself from my world. No one I know can reach her. I have no way to contact her, and it's driving me mad. There's this impulse inside me, this desperate need to track her down, to see her face, to understand what happened. I want to shake her, demand to know why she did this. But where would I even start? And even if I found her, what could I say? How do you make sense of something like this? How do you make up for something that feels so final? 11. I spent days after that conversation with Nick in a haze. The thought of Emma living a whole new life, married, pregnant, kept gnawing at me, pushing me closer to the edge. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Part of me was stuck in this sick loop, replaying everything that had gone wrong between us. I wanted answers. I needed them. But as the days turned into weeks, something shifted in me. I started to realize that no matter how much I wanted to fix things, no matter how much I craved closure or answers from Emma, I wasn't going to get them. She had moved on, and I was stuck. She had found a way to escape the mess we had made, while I kept living in it. One night, after a few too many drinks, I found myself staring at my phone. Her number still blocked, her social media gone. I thought about what I would say if I ever saw her again. Would I yell at her? Would I beg her to come back? I wasn't even sure anymore. It was all tangled up in this knot of anger, sadness, and guilt. That's when something clicked. Maybe I didn't need her to explain anything. Maybe I didn't need to track her down. The truth was, the past was too heavy to keep carrying. I had been waiting for Emma to fix me, waiting for her to give me something she was never going to give, an apology, an explanation, a chance to start over. But what if I didn't need her forgiveness? What if I could move on without it? The next morning, I woke up with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months, maybe even years. I didn't reach for a drink. I didn't think about Emma. Instead, I thought about me. I thought about everything I had been holding on to, the guilt, the anger, the regret, and realized I was the only one keeping myself trapped. Emma was gone, living her life, and I was still here, stuck in the wreckage of what we had once been. It wasn't just her that needed to move on. It was me too. I started to focus on things I had pushed aside for so long. I joined a new support group, not just for betrayed spouses, but for people looking to rebuild their lives. I cut back on the drinking, started exercising again, threw myself into my work, and began reaching out to friends I had isolated myself from. Then, a month later, something completely unexpected happened. One evening, I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't a bill or some junk, just a plain, white envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. I hadn't seen handwriting like that in years. It was Emma's. The note was short, almost blunt. Etan, I'm sorry. I needed to disappear for both of us. You wouldn't have let go if I stayed. I wouldn't have let go either. The truth is, I'm not the same person I was when we were together, and I'm not coming back. But I hope you find peace. We were both trapped in our own mistakes, and I didn't know how to fix it. I know you'll never forgive me for that, but I wanted to say this before it's too late. Take care of yourself. I really do wish you well. Emma. That was it. No explanación. No details about her new life. No promises to meet or talk. Just a simple note that acknowledged what we both knew deep down. We had broken each other beyond repair. For a long time, I stared at that letter, waiting for the anger to rise up in me again. But it didn't. Something inside me softened, and I finally understood. Emma had left not just to escape, but because she knew staying would have kept us both in the same cycle of hurt. And as much as I hated to admit it, she was right. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes moving on isn't about getting the answers or the closure you want. It's about accepting that some things can't be fixed, and that's okay. For the first time in what felt like forever, I took a deep breath and felt lighter. The past no longer had a hold on me. I wasn't waiting for Emma to fix what was broken. I could finally start fixing it myself. And so, the chapter of us, the one that had haunted me for so long, finally closed. Not with the dramatic confrontation I had imagined or the reconciliation I had hoped for, but with a quiet understanding that we had both become strangers. I walked away from that chapter with something Emma might never have known she gave me, the ability to let go.